Christmas candy in the 1970s was not just chocolate bars and store-bought candy canes. It was a labor of love, a ritual that transformed kitchens into fragrant, bustling workshops. Families gathered around stovetops, measuring sugar, butter, and milk with precision, knowing that a single misstep could ruin an entire batch. This was the era before mass-produced sweets dominated, when homemade treats reflected skill, patience, and tradition. In this video, we will uncover 25 forgotten Christmas candies from the 1970s. Each one carries a story, a memory, and a taste that has vanished from modern kitchens. From the caramelized elegance of Penucci to the ethereal beauty of Divinity, from crunchy peanut brittle to delicate cherry cordials, these treats were more than food, they were performances of craftsmanship and love. By the end of this video, viewers will not only rediscover candies that most people under 50 have never tasted, but also understand why these traditions mattered to families across America. Each recipe reveals a piece of history, a cultural moment, and the emotional connection between generations. If preserving forgotten food traditions excites you, join us on this journey and become part of our community at America's Lost Recipes, where we bring the flavors and stories of the past back to life. Let us begin. There was a time when Christmas candy meant more than convenience. It meant craftsmanship, patience, and family tradition. Penucci, the brown sugar fudge of the 1970s, exemplified this perfectly. Its caramel-colored squares were more than treats. They were symbols of skill, care, and holiday pride. Anyone who made Penucci understood that a single misstep could transform a perfect batch into a sticky, ruined mess. Penucci has its origins in New England, inspired by the Mexican word panela, or pananoca, meaning raw sugar. Home cooks combined brown sugar, butter, milk, and salt in a heavy saucepan, stirring constantly over medium heat until the mixture reached exactly 238 degrees Fahrenheit, the softball stage. The critical step came as the mixture cooled to 110 degrees before being beaten with a wooden spoon until it lost its gloss. The rich aroma of caramelized brown sugar filled the kitchen, drawing children to the counter and creating lasting memories. Once poured into buttered pans and scored into neat squares, each piece was often topped with a walnut half, a final flourish that signaled both attention to detail and culinary pride. Penucci was not merely candy. It was a performance, a test of patience and understanding of chemistry. Across Midwestern and New England kitchens, it was a holiday tradition that separated serious candy makers from casual bakers. Over time, as pre-packaged candies became widely available, Penucci slowly vanished from family tables. Today, few people under 50 have ever tasted it, and even fewer know its name. Yet the memory of its creamy, caramel richness lives on, a reminder of the deliberate, loving effort that defined American Christmas kitchens. Remembering Penucci is not only about flavor, it is about preserving tradition, honoring craftsmanship, and reconnecting with the warmth of family holidays. For those who cherish the stories and tastes of the past, America's Lost Recipes ensures that this sweet heritage is never forgotten. Divinity was the crown jewel of 1970s Christmas candy plates. Gleaming white, impossibly light, and ethereal, it seemed to float in the air before settling gently on waxed paper. To make Divinity successfully was to master both timing and technique, and in many households, it became a symbol of holiday excellence and domestic pride. Its origins trace back to the American South, though by the 1970s, Divinity had spread nationwide. The candy relied on a delicate balance between sugar syrup and whipped egg whites. Sugar, corn syrup, and water were boiled to exactly 260 degrees Fahrenheit, while egg whites were beaten to stiff peaks. The dramatic moment arrived when the boiling syrup was poured slowly into the egg whites while beating continuously, transforming the mixture into glossy white clouds. The final texture was soft, airy, and slightly chewy, creating a sensation unlike any other candy. Each piece was finished with a pecan half pressed carefully into its peak. In kitchens across America, mothers and daughters worked side by side, checking weather forecasts because humidity could ruin even the most careful preparation. Divinity demanded patience, coordination, and trust in the process. It was not merely candy, it was performance art measured in hours, not minutes. During the 1970s, divinity represented more than sweetness. It embodied the rhythm of family life, the anticipation of holiday gatherings, and the quiet pride of mastering a complex tradition. Children remembered the smell of caramelizing sugar and the anticipation of tasting a perfectly formed piece. Adults remembered the effort, the precision, and the artistry required to achieve perfection. Today, divinity has largely disappeared from American kitchens, replaced by convenience and pre-packaged sweets. Yet its legacy endures, a reminder of a time when candy was a craft, and each holiday treat told a story. For those who wish to rediscover these forgotten treasures, America's Lost Recipes ensures that the magic, skill, and nostalgia of divinity are never lost. Bourbon balls were the mischievous charm of 1970s Christmas candy plates. Small, dark, and intoxicatingly fragrant, these candies were meant for adults, offering a playful hint of holiday indulgence. They were sophisticated, slightly scandalous, and entirely absent from the reach of children. Their presence on a holiday tray signaled celebration, refinement, and a quiet wink to grown-ups who understood the joy of spirited sweets. The origin of bourbon balls lies in Kentucky's bourbon culture, though by the 1970s, they had spread to homes across the nation. Making them required simple ingredients but precise execution. Vanilla wafers were crushed into fine crumbs and combined with powdered sugar, cocoa, chopped pecans, corn syrup, and a generous pour of Kentucky bourbon. The mixture formed a fragrant, chocolatey dough that was rolled into 1-inch spheres. Each ball was then coated in powdered sugar or finely chopped nuts and left to mellow for at least 24 hours in a covered tin, allowing flavors to meld perfectly. The first bite of a bourbon ball revealed a layered experience. The cocoa-rich crumb, the nutty crunch of pecans, and finally the warmth of bourbon spreading luxuriously across the tongue. They were celebratory, indulgent, and slightly audacious. In many households, they appeared at cocktail parties, neighborhood exchanges, or special trays brought out only after the children went to bed. Bourbon balls were more than candy. They were a cultural marker of adult holiday traditions. They represented careful selection, taste refinement, and a willingness to embrace a moment of playful sophistication during a season often dominated by sweetness for children. Today, bourbon balls have largely vanished from contemporary kitchens, replaced by pre-packaged chocolates and truffles. Yet their legacy endures as a symbol of holiday craftsmanship, indulgence, and nostalgia. For those who wish to relive these spirited memories, America's Lost Recipes preserves the stories, flavors, and joy of these forgotten adult treats. Chocolate peppermint creams were the elegant statement of 1970s holiday candy plates. They combined two classic flavors of Christmas, rich chocolate and cool peppermint, into a single, delicate confection. These candies were proof that homemade sweets could rival the most sophisticated creations from professional chocolatiers, making them a point of pride for ambitious home cooks across America. The history of chocolate peppermint creams traces back to the tradition of peppermint-scented candies in the mid-20th century, though the 1970s version elevated them to a homemade art form. The process began with crafting a peppermint fondant center. Powdered sugar was combined with butter, cream, and peppermint extract to form a smooth, pliable dough. The centers were rolled thin, cut into circles or squares, and allowed to firm up overnight. The next day brought the chocolate coating. Semi-sweet chocolate was melted, often with a touch of paraffin wax for shine. Each fondant center was carefully dipped using a fork, ensuring even coverage and a glossy finish. Excess chocolate dripped away before the candies were placed on waxed paper to set. The result was a crisp chocolate exterior encasing a soft, cool peppermint interior, offering a luxurious textural contrast and balanced sweetness. Throughout the 1970s, these candies appeared in decorative tins, served as hostess gifts, and were presented on holiday dinner plates. Making chocolate peppermint creams required patience, attention to detail, and a delicate touch, qualities that reflected the era's approach to home cooking and holiday celebration. Today, they are rarely made at home, often replaced by store-bought chocolates. Yet their charm endures as a reminder of a time when candy making was a cherished tradition, blending creativity, skill, and festive joy. For those who treasure nostalgia and culinary craftsmanship, America's Lost Recipes ensures that the elegance and flavor of chocolate peppermint creams are never forgotten. Peanut brittle was the unmistakable crackle of 1970s Christmas candy, announcing its presence even before the first bite. Thin, golden sheets studded with roasted peanuts, this candy was both festive and formidable. Every family had its champion recipe, and debates often flared over whether to use raw or roasted peanuts, butter or margarine, light or dark corn syrup. Peanut brittle was serious business in kitchens across America. Its origins trace back to early American confectioners, though it became a household tradition by the 1970s. Making perfect peanut brittle required precision, speed, and careful timing. Sugar, corn syrup, water, and a pinch of salt were boiled to exactly 300 degrees Fahrenheit, the hard crack stage, while the cook watched with unwavering attention. Peanuts and butter were stirred in, and the mixture foamed dramatically when baking soda was added, creating a porous, almost magical texture. Once mixed, the candy was poured swiftly onto buttered marble slabs or baking sheets, spread thin, and left to cool into glossy shards. The sound of breaking peanut brittle was as iconic as its taste. Each piece offered a complex combination: the deep caramelized sugar, the roasted crunch of peanuts, and a subtle bitterness that balanced the sweetness perfectly. Peanut brittle was more than a candy, it was a family spectacle. Southern grandmothers guarded their methods like treasured secrets, while children eagerly waited for shards to cool just enough to handle. The process was as much about anticipation and shared experience as it was about the final treat. Today, peanut brittle has lost some of its festive prominence, overshadowed by commercial sweets and convenience candies. Yet its legacy remains, a reminder of hands-on holiday craftsmanship, the joy of crackling sugar, and a time when candy was both a treat and a tradition. For anyone longing to relive that holiday magic, America's Lost Recipes preserves the taste, the ritual, and the nostalgia of peanut brittle. Opera creams were the refined jewels of 1970s Christmas candy, small, pastel-colored treasures that captured the elegance of a bygone era. Pale pink, yellow, and white fondant centers were carefully encased in smooth chocolate, creating a candy that was as much a visual delight as a taste sensation. Unlike many homemade treats, opera creams were typically purchased from local candy shops, representing the height of sophistication for holiday entertaining. The origin of opera creams is rooted in early 20th century American confectionery traditions, though they reached peak popularity during the 1970s. Each piece was a miniature work of art, meticulously crafted with a smooth fondant center that melted in the mouth. Flavors ranged from vanilla, strawberry, and lemon to maple and occasionally cherry, with the chocolate shell providing a delicate contrast in texture. Some pieces were topped with candied violets or piped decorations, elevating them from simple candy to collectible confection. Opera creams were not merely treats. They were symbols of celebration, formality, and refined taste. They appeared in gold boxes, often gifted to teachers, neighbors, and important guests, or displayed on dessert trays during holiday parties. The candy's smooth, creamy interior contrasted with the firm chocolate shell, offering a melt-in-your-mouth experience that felt luxurious and sophisticated. These candies embodied the artistry of small-town candy makers and the era's attention to detail. They demanded no improvisation, yet their presence communicated careful curation and care. As mass-produced chocolates became widespread, opera creams gradually vanished from common kitchens, leaving only memories and occasional boutique appearances. For those seeking to rediscover a slice of 1970s elegance, America's Lost Recipes preserves the story, taste, and cultural significance of opera creams. Each candy is a reminder of a time when holiday confections were crafted with patience, artistry, and a desire to impress both visually and on the palate. Coconut bonbons were the playful, snowy delights of 1970s holiday candy, little white spheres that seemed to capture the spirit of winter in every bite. Shredded coconut bound with sweetened condensed milk, sometimes kissed with vanilla or almond extract, these candies were forgiving, fun, and intensely coconut-forward. Unlike more temperamental sweets, coconut bonbons allowed children to help in the kitchen without fear of failure, making them a favorite in family traditions across America. Their origin lies in mid-century American home kitchens, where simplicity met charm. Throughout the 1970s, these candies were fixtures at church bake sales, neighborhood cookie exchanges, and holiday parties. The three-ingredient recipe was accessible, yet when executed well, the result looked far more impressive than the effort suggested. Mothers often made them with daughters, imparting not only the recipe but also lessons in patience, precision, and holiday craftsmanship. The process began by mixing a package of sweetened flaked coconut with half a can of sweetened condensed milk until a sticky dough formed. Flavorings, such as vanilla or almond, were added to enhance depth. The mixture was rolled into 1-inch balls, sometimes hiding a maraschino cherry in the center for a touch of sophistication, or dipped in chocolate for a special upgrade. Each piece was lightly coated in powdered sugar and set on waxed paper to firm up. Coconut bonbons offered more than taste. They provided a sensory experience. The sweet aroma of coconut-filled kitchens, while the texture, a soft, chewy interior with a lightly crisped exterior, made them irresistible. They were candy that encouraged participation, creativity, and shared memories. Today, coconut bonbons are rare on modern holiday tables, yet they represent the heart of festive home candy making. America's Lost Recipes preserves their story, flavor, and nostalgic magic, reminding us of a time when simplicity, family, and sweetness blended perfectly in every bite. Chocolate fudge was the cornerstone of 1970s holiday candy, a dense, rich, and indulgent treat that defined Christmas tables across America. This was not the mass-produced, overly smooth chocolate of modern shelves. It was homemade, luxurious, and full of character. Every grandmother had a treasured recipe, and debates about the best method, evaporated milk or heavy cream, marshmallow cream or traditional techniques, were a staple of December conversations. The history of chocolate fudge dates back to late 19th century America, evolving into a festive tradition by mid-century. In the 1970s, making fudge was a December ritual, taken as seriously as decorating the tree. The process required careful attention. Sugar, cocoa powder, butter, and milk were combined in a heavy saucepan and stirred constantly to prevent scorching. The mixture was brought to exactly 234 degrees Fahrenheit, tested by dropping a bit into cold water to ensure the softball stage had been reached. Once removed from heat, vanilla was added, and the critical step followed, beating the mixture with a wooden spoon until it lost its gloss and thickened, a labor-intensive process that demanded patience and endurance. The glossy mixture was then poured into a buttered pan, allowed to set, and cut into perfect squares. The first bite was a revelation. Creamy, chocolatey, with a faint graininess that signified real homemade craftsmanship, not the artificial perfection of store-bought fudge. Chocolate fudge was more than a dessert. It was a familial ritual. Kitchens filled with the warm, sweet aroma of chocolate, and children watched with eager anticipation as the candy cooled. Each square represented hours of careful work, love, and holiday spirit, forming a tangible memory of Christmas past. Today, this classic is often replaced by pre-packaged chocolates, yet its legacy remains. America's Lost Recipes honors the craft, tradition, and nostalgic magic of chocolate fudge, preserving a taste of a time when homemade candy was an essential part of the holiday experience. Seafoam was the mysterious, ethereal candy that graced 1970s Christmas tables, pale green or ivory in color, light as air, and utterly captivating. Its appearance suggested delicacy, almost like a confection sculpted from clouds, yet the flavor was pure brown sugar bliss. Seafoam was often mistaken for divinity's cousin, but it possessed a unique texture and flavor profile, somewhere between airy meringue and crisp honeycomb. The origins of seafoam trace to mid-century American kitchens, where inventive home candy makers experimented with sugar chemistry to create visually stunning and texturally complex treats. In the 1970s, this candy appeared in church bake sales, neighborhood parties, and holiday gatherings, admired for its delicate foamy peaks and subtle caramelized sweetness. Achieving perfect seafoam was a test of skill, patience, and timing. Miss the moment, and it could collapse into sticky, unappealing mess. The process involved boiling a mixture of brown sugar, white sugar, corn syrup, and water to precisely 260 degrees Fahrenheit, then carefully pouring it into stiffly beaten egg whites. Constant beating transformed the syrup and whites into glossy, airy peaks, thick enough to hold shape yet light enough to dissolve on the tongue. Some variations included a touch of green coloring, enhancing the candy's oceanic illusion. Pecan halves or chocolate chips were often pressed on top for added texture and visual appeal. Seafoam was more than candy. It was a sensory experience. Kitchens filled with the sweet, warm aroma of caramelizing sugar, while each bite offered a crisp shell that gave way to a soft, airy interior. Its delicate sweetness and intriguing texture made it a conversation starter, a candy that demanded attention and respect. Though largely vanished from modern holiday candy trays, seafoam remains a testament to a time when home confectionery was art and science intertwined. America's Lost Recipes preserves its story, flavor, and nostalgic charm, honoring a candy that was truly magical in every sense. Pralines were creamy, pecan-studded discs that epitomized Southern sophistication on 1970s Christmas candy tables. These candies were not hard European confections. Instead, they were soft, buttery, and barely held their shape, a delicate balance that required skill, patience, and an intuitive touch. Pralines traveled northward from Louisiana, appearing in church cookbooks, neighborhood bake sales, and holiday gatherings, leaving a trail of caramelized sweetness in their wake. The history of pralines traces back to French settlers in New Orleans, where almonds were originally used before the local pecan became the star. By the 1970s, pralines were firmly entrenched in American holiday traditions, symbolizing craftsmanship, generosity, and the artistry of home candy making. Each batch was a statement of pride, and Southern cooks were fiercely protective of their methods. Too hard, and the candy would fracture. Too soft, and it would stick together. Perfect pralines struck the elusive balance. Buttery, creamy, and melting smoothly on the tongue. Making pralines required careful temperature control and timing. Brown sugar, white sugar, heavy cream, and butter were combined in a heavy saucepan and cooked to exactly 236 degrees Fahrenheit. Once removed from heat, whole pecans and a touch of vanilla were folded in, and the mixture was beaten just enough to thicken while retaining a glossy sheen. Spoonfuls were dropped onto waxed paper within a narrow window of time to set, ensuring each piece retained its soft, creamy texture and rich caramel flavor. Pralines were more than candy. They were a shared experience. Kitchens filled with the warm, sweet aroma of brown sugar and butter, drawing families together as each spoonful was carefully crafted. They were candy meant to impress guests, delight neighbors, and honor holiday traditions. Pralines were more than candy. They were a shared experience. Kitchens filled with the warm, sweet aroma of brown sugar and butter, drawing families together as each spoonful was carefully crafted. They were candy meant to impress guests, delight neighbors, and honor holiday traditions.